I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. And this is Currents.
Have guitar, will minister. We'll hear from one of the church's most popular troubadours, John Michael Talbot.
And it's not just music. It's a combination of music, teaching, and then leading people in guided meditation.
And he gives us a special in-studio performance.
My spirit exalts in God, my Savior.
Plus, it's about more than music, how this device is helping soldiers stay closer to God. Well, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. Tonight's show may be music to your ears. We hear from one of the most popular Christian recording artists, John Michael Talbot. Across some 3 decades, he's sold over 4 million albums, and he's also sold out concerts all around the world.
That's right, and back in April, the man known as the Troubadour for the Lord was here in New York for a series of performances, and he also took some time out to visit our studio. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
It's great to be here, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's just an honor to have you. And of course, your music has reached so many people over such a great span of space and time. Now, you're really kind of a legend in the Christian music world now, and we just thank you for making time for us.
Oh my. I'm grateful that you let me come.
Now you have to live up to that. No,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I'm a legend in my own mind.
Right. But now you're in New York right now, obviously, for these concerts that you'll be doing.
Yeah, and it's not just music. This new format has really been kind of a rebirth for me. Of course, I've done, 52 recordings, 22 books. So we're doing anywhere from 1 to 3 days. And when we do the 3-night missions, it's a combination of music, teaching, and then leading people in guided meditation.
Wow.
And so a little bit of the music that people like, a little bit of motivational speaking, which people need right now. Between the recession and the church and politics, and people need encouragement. They need to be given good news. So a little motivation, and then taking them by the hand and leading them into that deeper experience with Jesus through an actual experience of meditation. A lot of people talk about it,
right, but
to actually take people into it is a whole other thing. So we're experiencing great success with these evenings. And in the old days I did ticketed concerts, and we traveled with tour buses and sound and lights and crews and bands and the whole thing.
Groupies, the whole thing.
Yeah. And this new format is just so liberating for me because it's back to grassroots, back to the parishes, back to free will offering events. I kid, I say, with a ticketed event, you have to pay to get in.
Right.
With free will offering event, you have to pay to get out.
I love it.
And so we're just having a blast. And I'm 56 and I feel 25.
Well, it's amazing. It's an amazing thing. With this new format that you talk about, I think it's great that you are doing 2 things there that you talked about, and if you could expand on these concepts, I'd really appreciate it. One was the fact, taking meditation, which you said, which we talk about a lot,
right?
But taking that from being sort of this abstract sort of thing that's kind of there, and I kind of know what it is, but I kind of don't, to actually putting that into practice and making it something that's really a part of people's lives.
Right. I often say that, motivational speaking, which I can do, and I do, points the way to the door. Music is often the doorway.
Yeah.
But then you have to go through that doorway. And often the place that you go to is silence. So the greatest music is in silence. With meditational music, you have to hear the space between the notes, not just the note. You have to hear the silence between the words, not just the words. And we believe that that's appropriate because Jesus is the Logos, the Word incarnate in flesh and meat. So he was proclaiming even when he was silent, and he was ministering even when he was in what the ancients called Hezekiah, or sacred stillness. Yeah. So these evenings, we'll do a little music to kind of soften the soil, a little motivational preaching and teaching to teach about meditation. Mm-hmm. And then I'll pick up the guitar and we'll actually do the meditation together. So I don't just sing.
Right.
And I think that's why the live experiences of what I have done for 30 some odd years, why people keep coming back.
Yeah.
You know, and surprisingly, in Christian music, I hear this all the time. They say, well, you're one of the only artists that really ministers anymore. Everybody else does shows.
Yeah.
I'm shocked by that, because when we started, when I got out of secular music and went into religious music, I mean, what's the point in going back and doing what you did in the secular world?
Right.
I've already been there, done that, worn the tour jacket.
Exactly,
You know.
and the T-shirt and the whole
Yeah,
deal.
the whole deal. So.
Well, and I love that you talk about you know, listening in the silence, because as a musician myself, I mean, you know, as you study music, the rests are written in for a reason.
For a reason.
You know, and they're just as important as every note on the page.
Right.
So that's something to definitely pay attention to.
Absolutely, and then you know, to use the musical analogy, the conductor takes an ancient piece or an older piece, say Bach, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, whoever, and the interpretation of that conductor is every bit as important as the composer and as the players. See, so that's where the Spirit of God works.
Yeah.
So in every time I sing Holy is His Name, or Surrender to Jesus, or St. Teresa's Prayer, it's a little different, because that's the power, and that's where the Spirit of God is working. So you know, as I'm singing, it's always this interplay. I'm praying, I'm with God, and I'm also really trying to sense where the people are.
Yeah.
You know, what are they experiencing as we go through this together? And then you know, you adapt it, you shift it a little bit, and it works.
Oh,
you know,
that's
in
amazing.
recording, so many times we use, you know, click tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I hated it when we started switching to click tracks, because music has to have, you know, a little place where it slows down and speeds up, and you play with it.
The flow of the thing. Yeah.
And a good classical
Absolutely.
recording is filled with that.
Absolutely.
See?
That's
And that's
amazing.
picking up on the spirit of the moment.
Yeah. And we'll continue our conversation with John Michael Talbot a little bit later on in the show. But stay tuned, there's much more currents straight ahead.
When we return, the day's headlines, including the controversial mosque near Ground Zero may be closer to reality. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Coming up later, John Michael Talbot shares some of his inspiring music right here in our studio.
But first, let's turn to the day's headlines. A victory today for supporters of a controversial Islamic community center and mosque in Lower Manhattan. In a unanimous decision, the City Landmarks Preservation Commission voted to deny landmark status for a building 2 blocks away from the World Trade Center site. The decision means the existing building can be torn down to make way for the Cordoba House, a proposed community center and mosque that sparked controversy because of its proximity to the site of the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Opponents say it would be disrespectful to victims of the attacks, but supporters say the primary function of the center would be to promote tolerance and understanding. Reports say the developers of the Cordoba House have pledged to build a September 11th memorial on the site. Well, first Arizona, now Virginia. The debate over immigration moved to the East Coast this week after Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli gave police in his state the authority to check the immigration status of anyone stopped for any reason. Reports say Virginia's policy is less stringent than the portion of Arizona's law thrown out by a judge last week. In Arizona, police would have been required to check a person's immigration status if there was a reasonable suspicion they were illegal. Virginia police had the authority to ask, but there is no requirement. Meantime, Catholic bishops in Mexico expressed their support for Arizona's immigrants this week. In a statement, the bishops expressed profound sorrow and condemned the, quote, selfish and irresponsible position of supporters of the Arizona immigration law. The bishop said immigrant families have risked all in the search of a better life, but vowed to welcome back all who are forced to return to Mexico. Along the Gulf Coast Monday, heavenly prayers aim to overcome what has been hell on earth for many fishermen. Church and community leaders gathered for a blessing of the fleet in St. Bernard Parish. As Blair Arvin reports, those affected by the Gulf oil spill hope their prayers will be answered.
This is our oyster dredge.
Don Robin hangs on his boat in Wyclosky. It's a break from what's become his new norm since the oil disaster.
Things has been really, I guess, stressful with everything that we're going through, and this is kind of a way to unwind a little bit.
Robin, his friends, and neighbors are united to watch the St. Bernard blessing of the fleet.
They need it in that boat.
With Parish President Craig Tafaro by his side, Father John Arnani blesses the boats and asks for protection for the fishermen. This year, the celebration takes on new meaning for those affected by the leak.
That's the biggest challenge, is not knowing if they're going to be able to get back out to do what they've done all their life, and that is live on the water. Especially with the oil spills, very different.
And Robin has felt it. His oyster farming business of 60 years has shut down completely.
We went from probably producing 5, maybe 800 sacks of oysters a day to nothing.
His boat, once a party place for the tradition, is now used in the BP cleanup. The blessing comes just a day after more waters open to commercial fishing, but for Robin, he says he's not ready to get back out there.
We won't be harvesting until we really feel like it's safe.
What we're now fighting is basically a reality that the oil spill ever existed. You know, we continue to have conflicting data and data that we think is prematurely stated that the oil is gone.
Lots of unknowns on day 103 of the disaster. Robin would like to get back to what his family has done for 4 generations. This afternoon, a blessing in hopes that comes true.
And that is reporter Blair Arvin in St. Bernard Parish, Louisiana.
Well, he's not exactly gathering all the animals 2 by 2, but one Florida man is trying to save wildlife affected by the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico. Naturalist, author, and researcher Jack Rudlow calls his project Operation Noah's Ark. And so far, he's collected more than 350 different species. The animals now live on his high-tech 4-acre facility that includes marshland and mimics high and low tide. Rudlow says the project could cost $1.2 million when all said and done. He hopes BP will pick up some of the tab. Well, some 3,000 people took part in Jerusalem's annual Gay Pride Parade last week. Those people might be a little surprised to hear who stepped up this week in support of them. A group of more than 100 modern Orthodox rabbis and educators issued a statement calling for respect for homosexuals, but reports say it stopped short of condoning same-sex relationships. The statement was the brainchild of Rabbi Nathaniel Helfgott, who teaches at a rabbinical school here in New York City. The statement says, quote, "All human beings are created in the image of God and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect." It also says that they should be welcomed as full members of the synagogue. But it also says Jewish law does not allow the blessing of same-sex relationships. Well, scientists say they've uncovered the remains of a prominent biblical figure in an unlikely place. Archaeologists announced this week they found parts of the relics of St. John the Baptist on an island off the southeast coast of Bulgaria. Researchers uncovered a relic urn in the altar of a church bearing the name of St. John the Baptist. The urn was opened Sunday. Scientists say it contains bone fragments from the arm and leg of the saint. Now, Bulgaria's culture minister, though, warned against speculation until test results come in. And finally, what's on your MP3 player? The latest top 40 hits, maybe, perhaps some oldies or some disco. How about prayers and blessings? Well, for 1,000 troops serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, that will soon be the case. We get details now from Rome Reports.
After a year in the making, 1,000 MP3 players are now being sent to Catholic troops and wounded soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. But these aren't just any MP3 players. They come preloaded with 7 hours of Catholic content. Soldiers can listen to a warrior rosary, a Memorial Day Mass, or a presentation made by the late Archbishop Fulton Sheen. The Frontline Faith Project is leading the distribution effort to tide soldiers over between chaplain and priest visits to battle zones. Other programs included in the portable devices are children's letters to soldiers, stories about faith and military life, homilies, and music. The Military Archdiocese will distribute the MP3 players through its 281 chaplains and priests, but this can take time because their visits can be infrequent. It costs $24 to buy and ship the MP3 players. So far, enough money has been raised for 1,000 players. There are 330,000 Catholics in the military, and the long-term goal is for each member to receive a MP3 player.
Well, when we come back, you may find something new to put on your MP3 player. There's more Currents coming up.
Just ahead, there's more to this musician than guitar and voice. We'll hear about the ministry of John Michael Talbot.
We are the first community of our kind with canonical Catholic Church approval in the United States. And the real earmark is integration.
Welcome back. Well, earlier we heard from the troubadour for the Lord, John Michael Talbot, as he discussed his music.
And we're going to continue that conversation right now, as a matter of fact, as he shares some insight into his own life journey. From a Methodist in the South to a devout Catholic now, engaged in what's known as the new monasticism. John Michael Talbot, thanks so much for joining us here once again on Currents. We appreciate it.
You're most welcome. It's great to be here, Matt.
Well, taking our time today to talk about a little bit more about your life, your history, your background, and kind of what led you to where you are today. Now, I understand you grew up in a Methodist family.
Yeah, I come from a long line of Methodist ministers, and surprisingly, after I became a Catholic, I tell people I'm a better Methodist than ever. And I still love to go back to Methodist churches and minister. Yeah. And my grandmother, before she passed away, she says, Johnny, she says, you're fulfilling what your grandfather did.
Wow.
Because I go out and I sing and preach, teach, call people to Christ, call people to become better members of the church, and it's great. It's evangelization.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it's kind of in its purest sense, because you like to go around now and, really get in there with the people on a very personal level. Well, what led you to that? I mean, I know that you've had a very interesting, not only personal life journey, but you've had a very interesting spiritual journey as well. It's taken several turns.
Yeah, well, I started in secular music when I was a kid, and part of the country rock movement. Left that when I saw a lot of really, really unhappy superstars. Yeah. And one thing led to another. I got involved in the early days of the Jesus movement in '71, and by '75 I was recording some Christian albums with Sparrow Records, which is now the biggest record company for Christianity in the world. And then I became a Catholic in 1978, thought that the whole thing was over, because contemporary Christian music really comes out of a Southern Baptist background, and there's a slight anti-Catholic bias. Yeah. So I thought, well, I'm done. Yeah. And we put out a record called The Lord's Supper, and surprised everybody, including me, when it became the biggest record in Christian music that year. Did Come to the Quiet, which was very quiet and not Christian rock at all. Mm-hmm. And everybody thought, well, this is going to flop. And it sold 3 times more than Lord's Supper. So, secular music, then Christian music, and now in Catholic music. And I've done 52 Christian solo recordings, and 50 of them are as a Catholic. And the great joy of it is, I think, is that it's bridged gaps and barriers. It's allowed non-Catholics to realize that you can be a Catholic and be saved.
Yes.
You can actually have a relationship with Jesus. And it's been a great experience for Catholics to experience some of the non-Catholic life and vibrancy. Right. And so there's a cross-pollination that's very, very healthy.
Right. Now, what about I know that's something that you are very passionate about, is the new monasticism. Tell us about it.
Well, the term has only been used for 5 years. We've been around for 30. The new monasticism is an international movement of 40 or 50 communities. We're part of it. We are the first community of our kind with canonical Catholic Church approval in the United States. And the real earmark is integration. So we would integrate the charismatic and the contemplative, the spontaneous worship with liturgical worship, a contemplative monastic base, and then reaching out in what John Paul II called the new evangelization. Right. And then we would also integrate states of life. So we have traditional celibate monks, traditional celibate sisters, singles who can marry, and families, all in one integrated monasticism. I'm part of the family expression. Wow. Then we have a domestic expression of men and women who live in their own homes. The word domestic comes from domicile, home. And ironically, here in the United States, I think the greatest phenomenon that monasteries are experiencing is all these people, Catholic, non-Catholic, who want to in some way take that more contemplative monastic spirituality and apply it to their own life in the secular world. So we're experiencing this huge growth of domestic members of our community, and we're also seeing an awful lot of families who are interested in the integrated expression of monasticism. So I never set out to do anything new.
Yeah.
I just set out to be a hermit and lived in the woods at a retreat center.
Yeah.
And people began coming to the hermitage door, and lo and behold, here we are.
There you go.
And I'm really excited by it. You know, Viola and I went to a meeting of new communities over in Rome about 4 years ago. And this thing is alive and well, and it's vibrant, vibrant. And I think we need some of that vibrancy in the church. Again, you know, we've experienced a recession. A lot of people are very politically scared. Yeah. You know, what's going on, left, right, coffee, tea, who knows, you know. And then we've had the scandals in the church that frankly aren't just limited to the Catholic Church. Other churches are experiencing the same thing. So it's time for us to focus on the majority of the folks who are just living the gospel, trying to love God, raise their families, and be faithful. And these folks are ready for something new. Yeah. Well, so that's what we're seeing.
There you go. Well, we'll definitely link to your website, and people can find out more about you and your life and work and ministry and the new monasticism as well.
Come join us, folks. I mean, you know, here we are, and we need something alive and vibrant in our country. Come and join us.
There you go.
There's good things happening.
Definitely right now, it's very, very needed. Yeah. Well, John Michael Talbot, thank you so much for joining us here the past couple of days on Currents. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks.
Well, don't go away. When we come back, a special musical performance. Finally tonight, a special treat here on Currents. We just heard about the life and the work of John Michael Talbot, and now we're going to hear his music.
Sending us off now with a special in-studio performance. Here again is John Michael Talbot.
My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord, and my spirit exalts in God my Savior, for He has looked with mercy on my lowliness, and my name will be forever exalted. For the mighty God has done great things for me, and His mercy will reach from age to age, and holy, holy is His name. And holy Holy, holy is His name, and holy, holy, holy is His name.
Well, the music and message of John Michael Talbot, just beautiful there. And while he was here, he also performed another song. You can see that exclusively over on our website. Just go to currentsny.net. There are also links to more information on where you can see John Michael Talbot and buy his recordings.
Well, that is it for tonight. Coming up tomorrow, what is the word the young people, or I should say, what's the word? I'm not down with it. The young people in Queens find out. Meantime, remember, we are always online at currentsny.net, and you can follow us on Twitter. You can also become our fan on Facebook as well. Until next time, I'm the uncool Francesca Maxime.
You got the Twitter, though. You got the Facebook, everything. And I'm Matt McClure. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.